Emerging Threats Hub. Armor, AI, and Alliances. Navigating Modern Defense Challenges.
Hello, and welcome to Emerging Threats Hub. I'm your host, Sébastien. We open today with a fundamental question that is reverberating through the halls of power in Brussels, Berlin, and Washington. Can Europe truly defend itself without the United States? It's a question sharpened by paradox. The United States is simultaneously pushing NATO to integrate thousands of new drones into its war plans, while also proposing significant troop cuts in Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, key European nations are signaling a new era of strategic autonomy. This divergence isn't just a diplomatic footnote. It's a potential fracture line in the central security alliance of the last 75 years. On today's episode, we will move beyond the headlines to dissect the hardware being built, the human cost being paid on the front lines, and the diplomatic tremors threatening to reshape our world. We'll explore the United Kingdom's tank expansion, the shocking deployment of North Korean troops in Ukraine, and the fragile supply chains that underpin our technological superiority. Finally, we'll look toward the pathways for resilience and peace in a rapidly shifting global landscape. This is Emerging Threats Hub.
The hardware surge, from steel hulls to digital shields.
Let's begin with the tangible, the hardware. The steel and silicon that define modern military power. In the United Kingdom, the Ministry of Defense has announced a significant expansion of its Challenger 2 main battle tank fleet. They are refurbishing and upgrading 148 of these heavy armored vehicles and adding 69 newly built ones. This isn't just maintenance, it's a clear signal. Amidst rising tensions with Russia, the UK is hardening its conventional land warfare posture. The crucial question here isn't just about the number of tanks, but whether industrial capacity can keep pace with strategic needs. Can British factories produce these machines at scale and on time? But modern conflict is fought with more than just armor. It's fought with information and algorithms. The United States Army is investing heavily in new artificial intelligence to counter the drone threat. Think of it as a digital shield. The system, known as Leonidas, uses directed energy to create a kind of electronic bubble, disabling or destroying swarms of enemy drones before they can strike. This move from kinetic to electronic warfare is a paradigm shift, moving from shooting bullets down a barrel to manipulating the electromagnetic spectrum itself. And these technological shifts are global. China has reportedly developed what is being called an arsenal ship. Imagine a vessel, almost entirely automated, that is essentially a floating warehouse of missiles. It's designed to overwhelm an adversary's defenses through sheer volume, while still more concept than reality. It illustrates the strategic calculus of mass, long-range firepower shaping naval doctrine in the Indo-Pacific. Steel hulls, digital shields, and floating arsenals. The tools of conflict are evolving, and so are the strategies that wield them.
Frontlines, the human cost and economic calculus of war.
Now, let's shift from the hardware to the humans who use it, and to the economies that sustain them. The human dimension of today's conflicts is often obscured by reports of systems and strategies, but two recent developments bring it into stark relief. First, the confirmed deployment and casualties of North Korean troops supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. Intelligence reports suggest that over 5,000 North Korean soldiers have been sent to the front lines, with more than 600 killed in combat. This is an extraordinary development. It escalates the Ukraine conflict into a truly global proxy war. But more importantly, it highlights a deeply troubling ethical reality. These are individuals, sent by their state to die in a foreign war for reasons that have little to do with their own security. It underscores the desperation of the Russian war machine and the transactional, brutal nature of the Pyongyang-Moscow relationship. This human calculus stands in contrast to the economic calculus being calculated in Kyiv. Ukraine, while heavily reliant on Western aid, has begun exporting its own innovative weapons systems to fund its domestic production. They are selling naval drones and artillery abroad. This is a remarkable story of wartime ingenuity and desperation. It's a paradox. A nation at war, importing arms to survive, while also exporting them to finance its own defense industry. The strategy is pragmatic, but it's not without risk. It raises complex questions about intellectual property sharing with allies and the potential for proliferating powerful, low-cost weaponry. It's a dilemma born from necessity, highlighting the immense pressures on a nation fighting for its survival.
Diplomatic fault lines, a fraying transatlantic alliance.
These developments in hardware and on the front lines are unfolding against a backdrop of significant diplomatic strain. The most critical of these is the growing divergence in threat perception between the United States and Europe. The American strategic focus is increasingly pivoting to the long-term challenge posed by China in the Indo-Pacific. For many European capitals, however, the immediate and existential threat remains a revanchist Russia. This is the central fault line when the United States proposes troop cuts in Europe, a reduction of nearly 12,000 soldiers based in Germany. It is interpreted in Berlin, Paris, and Warsaw not as a minor adjustment, but as a potential deprioritization of the European theater. This feeling has spurred a bold move from France. Paris is intensifying its push for the European Union to commit to spending 1% of its collective GDP on defense. This is a direct challenge to the post-World War II US-dominated security architecture. It's a call for strategic autonomy. The message from Paris is clear. Europe must develop the capacity and the political will to guarantee its own security. This isn't about opposing the United States, but about building a more balanced and resilient partnership. The success or failure of this French-led initiative could very well define the future of NATO and the transatlantic relationship for generations to come.
Systemic risks, the hidden fragility of our defense.
These diplomatic tensions are exacerbated by systemic risks that lie beneath the surface of our military power vulnerabilities in the very foundations of our defense infrastructure. Consider the drone supply chain. The unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, that have become so central to modern warfare, from reconnaissance to strike missions, rely on a global web of components. Their microchips, sensors, and motors often originate from a handful of factories in East Asia. This creates a critical vulnerability. A single disruption, whether from a natural disaster, geopolitical blackmail, or a conflict in the Taiwan Strait, could effectively ground the drone fleets of Western militaries. Decoupling from these supply chains is a priority, but it is a monumental task that will take years and hundreds of billions of dollars in investment. This fragility is mirrored in the realm of strategic materials. The rare earth elements needed for everything from precision-guided munitions to the magnets in electric motors and wind turbines are overwhelmingly controlled by China. This gives Beijing immense leverage. The debate over guns versus butter, the classic trade-off between military spending and social welfare, is now being reforged into a debate over economic security. How do nations secure access to these foundational materials without compromising their strategic autonomy? These are not problems with easy solutions, but they are essential questions we must answer to architect a stable future.
Pathways to resilience, building a more durable peace.
So, where do these fault lines, risks, and contradictions lead us? Is a more fragmented and dangerous world inevitable? Not necessarily. Within these challenges, pathways to resilience are emerging. NATO is not standing still. Recognizing the new threats, the alliance is working to embed drones and AI into its war plans, creating a more interoperable and technologically advanced defense posture. It is also revitalizing concepts of civil defense, recognizing that protecting civilian populations and critical infrastructure is as crucial as deploying tanks and jets. Interoperability, especially in the digital domain, ensuring that allies can communicate and share data seamlessly through secure cloud networks, is the technical backbone of a modern alliance. Perhaps the most profound shift in thinking is coming from the European Union. Beyond France's call for higher spending, the EU is pushing for a unified research and funding strategy for defense technology. By pooling resources, member states can avoid duplicating efforts and compete with the scale of the US and Chinese defense industrial bases. This isn't just about building better weapons. It's about building a more integrated and self-reliant European security identity. It's a long-term project, focused on architecting stability from the ground up, based on shared principles and collective investment.
The big picture, navigating multipolarity.
As we connect these dots, the UK's new tanks, the North Korean losses in Ukraine, the US-EU strategic debate, a central narrative emerges. We are navigating the turbulent transition from a unipolar world to a multipolar one. In this new era, power is more diffuse. Technology is both a tool of empowerment and a critical vulnerability. Alliances are being tested and redefined. The choices made today about supply chains, about alliance structures, about the ethics of AI and warfare will set the course for the coming decades. The path forward requires clarity, principle, and a steadfast commitment to finding solutions. It requires us to see beyond the immediate headlines of conflict and procurement, and to focus on the underlying systems that determine whether we move toward greater peace or greater instability. Our task, as informed global citizens, is to understand these dynamics, to ask the right questions, and to support the policies and principles that lead to a more just and stable world. That's all for this episode of Emerging Threats Hub. We've explored the surge in new defense hardware, the stark human realities on the front lines, and the deepening diplomatic divides shaping our world. We've seen the systemic risks in our supply chains and the initial hopeful steps toward building a more resilient future. The story of global security is not written in stone. It is being written every day by the choices we make. Understanding these choices is the first step towards shaping them for the better. Thank you for listening. I'm Sébastien. Be vigilant, be curious, and be well.